All right. Well, we will go ahead and get started. Hi again. I'm Gillian, one of the coaches for the First Timers Clinic. And this is clinic number 4, which is hard to believe. Race day is approaching really quickly, and we're already at transitions, which is awesome. I also know if it's, well, being your first triathlon, transitions can be this big question mark of how do they work? They seem really confusing. There seems to be a lot. So the goal here today is to make sure you leave here knowing what to expect and realizing that it really can actually be very simple. So, as always, as we go along, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And after we're done going through the slides and taking a look at transition area we have set up here, I will be happy to answer any questions about anything triathlon. So, first time doing this clinic remotely or via Zoom, so I was trying to figure out the best way to make it work. And so hopefully you'll be able to see, but if not, let me know. So it's going to be a mixture of slides, but then also have kind of a transition area set up. So let's go. All right. So transitions. There are 2 transitions in the triathlon, and they're going to be termed T1 and T2. So even after at the end of the race, when you get your time, you'll actually see times for both your transition 1 and transition 2. Always the easiest place to cut off some time without having to actually train, maybe just knowing a few tricks. So T1, T2. T1 is going to be your swim to bike transition, and T2 is going to be your bike to run transition. Now, both the transitions happen in the same place. So we've taken a look at the map before, but I'm going to pull it up again. So the transition area is this orange area right here. So on the map here. And so that's where all of this transitioning is going to happen. So basically, either the day before or the morning of, you'll have the opportunity to go into transition. If you're going the day before, you can only rack your bike. And I think I talked about this at the last clinic, but some people will choose to rack their bike the day before if traveling with their bike is cumbersome, or maybe you're actually staying in the hotel across the way and you just rather get it out of the way and rack it. So you can rack your bike the day before. We also always do a first timers walkthrough of the transition area. So whether you're racking your bike the day before or not, there's going to be a time on that Saturday where everybody can get together. We'll have a meeting place near the expo and walk over to transition together to kind of take a look at it, to talk about it a little bit. So a lot of these things you've seen in pictures or in videos, you'll finally get to see in real life. And it's a good way to just make you feel more comfortable in the morning of. So you can choose to rack your bike the day of or the morning of, but it all takes place in exactly the same area. So T1 is going to take place after you get out of the swim. As we've talked about, there's a little bit of a jog to the transition area. And then you're going to do your transition, and then you're actually going to bike out the north side. When you come back to do your T2, you're going to enter here on the north side off your bike and actually exit on the south end to go out for the run. So, and I may circle back to a few more things on that as we go through. But so transitions in general, the best way to make them feel smooth and to feel comfortable, we have an acronym GRIT. So the G is to get ready, meaning make a checklist so that, when you're packing the night before or the day before or 2 days before the race, you're not just guessing about what you need. A good rule of thumb is if you haven't used it while you're training, you're not going to need it on race day. So we'll talk a little bit more about what exactly you need, but making a checklist, and that's something you can just start making now. What is it that you use for the swim? What is it you use for the bike? What do you use when you go out for a run? Rehearse. So after today, you'll know everything you need to know about the transitions, and the best way to feel comfortable after making a checklist, because I'm pretty sure I just said that was the best way to feel comfortable, is to rehearse. So set out your transition area. Do exactly what I did here. Put it out in your family room, whatever it is. Take it down to the lake when you're out there swimming, and actually practice. Going from the swim and then go on a little bike ride, or even practice going from a swim and then going out for a run. But just setting it up someplace and practicing it and seeing it is going to make you feel a lot more comfortable the morning of. The I, initiate the plan. So that's what we'll talk about this when we get to the actual race day and what we mean by that. And then time to shine, stick to the plan. We'll also talk about that more, but again, whatever you've used during training, whatever you had on that checklist, that's what you do the on race day. In the morning, you're going out of the house and you're like, oh, well, maybe I need, I don't even know, this bag of popcorn. I guarantee you, if you've not had a bag of popcorn while you're training, maybe you have, you're not going to need it on race day. So, all right. So how it works. Okay, zoom in here a little bit more. Okay, this is actually a picture of transition. So this is not Chicago's transition though, but a very similar setup of what Chicago looks like. So you're gonna have these long transition racks. I didn't have one to set up in here to show in real life, but you're gonna have these long metal racks. Each one of them is going to be numbered. When you go to get your numbers, you'll get a number, and your number is going to correspond to one of the racks. And that's going to be your transition rack. Good thing about first timers, they also put a big sign that says first timers on it. And as I've stated before, they're usually very nice and give the first timers the best spot. So a spot down at the bottom, very easy to find. Again, Chicago Triathlon is very large. So imagine just being in the middle of that, which someday when you are doing, the triathlon next year, you won't get the benefits of the first timers program and you'll be smack in the middle there. But this is what transition is going to look like. So the morning of, you'll come into transition, you'll find your rack, and you can put your bike anywhere on the rack. So there's not going to be numbers, it's not going to be number 12, 13, 14. It's going to be 1 through 30. And you can put your bike anywhere on that rack. Now, what you'll see in the picture is that you're going to rack your bike by the seat post. So you're going to hook the rack. You're going to bring your bike and you're going to hook your bike over the rack so that the metal bar sits underneath your seat post. So your front wheel is the wheel that's going to be touching the ground. If you are the first person there, you get to pick which direction you go. If you are not the first person to the rack, you are going to alternate directions with your neighbor bike. So your front wheel is going to be facing one direction, their front wheel is going to be facing the other. And this is going to give you enough room during transition to set up your stuff so you're not right on top of each other. Also, we fit way more bikes on the rack. And don't worry, they're not going to be squished in there, so you're going to have enough room, but they are going to be close on that rack. So that's the first thing you do is hook up your bike. Let's see. All right, so once you have your bike hooked up by the seat and the front wheel is on the ground, you are going to set up your stuff on one of the sides of your front wheel. And again, usually there becomes a precedent that gets set on which side of the wheel that everybody starts to set up. But just remember, your stuff goes on one of the sides of your front wheel. So your neighbor's bike is the rear wheel is going to be over top of it, which is going to give you enough space to put your stuff. So that's where you're going to set your stuff up. Now, so this is a sample checklist. Again, you may have not all of this stuff, you may have some of this stuff, but as the picture shows, less is definitely more. So the less you can actually have there, the less likely you are to lose something, the quicker it is going to be to find whatever you need. So just thinking less is more. And if you haven't used it in training, you are not going to use it on race day. Maybe a couple of exceptions to that. But so, for example, we have here swim, goggles. You need your goggles. You need your swim cap. And you need whatever it is you're going to wear. And if you're going to wear a wetsuit. A couple of the other things that people have talked about that you might need, if you have a pair of cheap flip-flops you're taking down and getting rid of, you can, because of the long walk down to the swim start, you might need that. You also probably are going to want some kind of nutrition and water for that time in between leaving transition and your actual swim start. But as far as gear goes, goggles, swim cap, clothing, wetsuit. The other thing that you will be given on when you go to the expo to get all your stuff is going to be a timing chip. And the timing chip is going to be on a anklet for your ankle. And you're going to put that on your left leg. And that is one of the things to put on the list and make sure you don't forget. Anybody that since transitions has gotten halfway to the triathlon and been like, oh, I forgot my timing chip. So you want to make sure you have that. You're going to put it on your left ankle. That's what's going to track your timing. And you want to put it on your left ankle because once you get on the bike, your gears are on the right side of your bike. And you don't want to it's like riding a bike with jeans and then you end up with holes all over your jeans. Your right leg, you don't want to get it caught in the gear. So put it on your left leg. That's one other thing to think about. As far as the bike goes, bike helmet. We talked about that. That is like the number one thing. You're not going anywhere without a bike helmet. Shoes, whatever it is you're going to wear on the bike. So whether it's bike shoes or tennis shoes, sunglasses, again, clothing, whatever it is, nutrition. I also think I've mentioned this before. That's the number. Do not forget to hydrate and to refuel while you're on the bike. One of the hardest things and one of the big mistakes that sometimes happen because drinking on the bike or eating on the bike is a little bit of a skill. So whether you do that actually on the bike or in transition, make sure you have nutrition because you don't want to get to the run already dehydrated. Socks, if you're wearing socks, that's what you also need for the bike. Run, we talked about this, easy. Shoes, it is where you need your bib number. So again, we talked about the race belt, which is an easy way to the number. And I actually lost mine this weekend at a race, so I don't have one to show you. But you put your number on a race belt, and you just go and you snap it on when you go to the run. Again, if you haven't watched any of the videos before this where we've talked about it, Google race belt for triathlon and you will see thousands of them. They will also be all over the expo. So you can get them there. But again, nutrition, socks, some of the miscellaneous things that you may need, contacts. So for example, without my contacts, am definitely not riding a bike, and it would be really hard pressed to run or walk anywhere. So I always bring an extra pair of contacts for my transition area. Um, Earplugs, if you're wearing earplugs in the water, bringing those. Hair tie also. 5 years ago, I had very long hair, and trying to bike and run without a hair tie because it snaps after you get out of the water is one of the most miserable things. To bring in an extra hair tie. Sunscreen, definitely important, especially if it's one of the hot years for the triathlon. There's not a lot of shade, so you're going to be right out in the open. So let's see. I can't remember the next slide. Okay. So that's a sample checklist. Now, as we talked about, where do I set up? You rack your bike by the seat post. You put your stuff by the front wheel. Now, how you set up, the easiest way to think about it is set up so that you can't forget anything. So when you come running up out of transition, you're going to be you're going to think about that your stuff, this side of your stuff is the stuff you're going to get to first. The stuff closer to the middle of your bike is the stuff you're going to need last. So I always start with my biking stuff up towards the front of my bike and my running stuff towards the middle of the bike. So that's, let's see if I have some pictures here. Yeah, so here's just kind of a big overview. You can see the bikes going back and forth, all hooked up by their seat posts. You can see all the different mats there next to the front wheels. On the other side, there would be alternating mats of transition stuff. But here's a very, very, very clean setup for transition. Now, this person, and again, you can Google transitions and have 50 different ways of doing it. So, for example, this one has all of their bike stuff on one side, parallel to the bike, and then the run stuff on the other side. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second to kind of hopefully give everybody a better view of okay, this is working out, but let's see. Okay, so I think everybody can see, but so anyways, as we talked about, front of the bike, the way I set up everything is on the front part, I put my bike stuff. So for example, I've got both of my bike shoes. In the bike shoes, I have my socks. So I wear clipless pedals. Now I will say these are the worst triathlon bike shoes ever because they're lace up. So don't recommend it. I need to get new shoes. But anyways, bike shoes, socks, one sock in each one. So that again, you don't want to be searching for your one lost sock. Easy. If you're not wearing bike shoes, you'd put your running shoes right there. Now, let me get back to underneath it. You're going to want to put your stuff on something. So you're not going to want to put it straight on the ground because there's going to be dirt, mud, whatever. So I use kind of a bath hand towel. You know, you want something that's not too big. You don't want to take up a whole like 6-foot area. So I use a bath towel. It's also good because then you can use it to wipe off your shoes, your feet. After you get out of the water as you're running, you're definitely going to pick up little rocks and dirt. Everybody knows it's no fun to run or bike with that pebble on your foot. So you can also use the towel to wipe your feet off. Some people do choose to bring another towel and use that to wipe their feet off. But I definitely say you come out of the water, you get here. It's also why I have a water bottle here. So this would be in addition to whatever's on my bike for the ride. One, to hydrate, but two, you get there and you're muddy, you just squirt your feet off, you dry them off real quick, and then you put your bike shoes on. So bike shoes, in the bike shoes, the socks, helmet. Again, we talked about can't go anywhere without the helmet. I personally do not recommend hooking necessarily your helmet to your bike. Some people will, and again, it's a preference. But what I've found over time is, somebody running by, it tends to get hit a lot. And so I always put mine in between my bike shoes so that it's kind of stuck in place. If you're really attention to detail, I put it upside down and with the back facing the middle of the bike, so that literally you grab your bike and your helmet, you just put it on your head and go. Also sunglasses, again, something that gets very easily lost, so you're going to want to put those in your helmet as well. Again, saving seconds, but why not? Having them open already, so you just grab them, put them on, and off you go. So that's really all you need for the bike. If you are not swimming in, so if you're either not swimming in a shirt or like I often prefer, because I don't like wet shirts, I swim in a sports bra with my wetsuit over it and then just put a t-shirt. I'd put the t-shirt right in the helmet, first thing on, and ready to go. So the bike, yep, so you put everything on. You would then take your bike off the rack, took it off. As long as you're not super tall, you'll be able to slide the bike underneath the rack and just take off. If you are taller, then it's a little bit more tricky to get it off. And we can certainly talk about that. If you're very tall, sometimes you have to hook it by the front handlebars actually, but again, most of the time you can just unhook it and take off. Let's see. So you're off on the bike. Back in from the bike, and now it's time for the run. So the thing is that before the race, your transition area is going to be very pretty and very nice looking. By the end of the race, it's going to look like a disaster zone. There's going to be stuff everywhere. Nothing's going to be in order. So when you do come back, you want to try to get back to where your stuff was. So at the beginning of the day, when you go in to rack your bike, you're going to look for road map signs, so noticing, am I really close to the swim in arch, or is there, is the water table right by me? Figuring out where your stuff is, so at least you can get in the general vicinity and then finding your stuff. It's also why having a towel that is recognizable to you, so a color or some kind of pattern that you will see and know, because bike helmets and shoes end up all looking exactly alike. So you'll come in the bike in, you'll find your transition area, you'll rack your bike again, you'll take your stuff off, and then you're going to move on to the run. So if you're taking your shoes off, your bike shoes off, take those off, take your helmet off. I will say, do not worry about it if you get halfway through the run and you realize you're still wearing your helmet. It's totally understandable. I actually, a guy that I used to work with, got halfway through the bike and realized he still had his wetsuit on. They were wetsuit shorts, but nonetheless, he still had his wetsuit on, and it made for a pretty miserable bike ride, obviously. So come in, take your bike stuff off, and then you're on to the run. Same thing. Having your shoes ready. If you are going to tie your shoes, making sure they're untied, so you're not trying to untie them as you go. They also make things like speed laces, which a lot of people like, so that you can just slide them on and go. This is also where I would stuff my race belt into my shoe with my number, so that you can't leave without having your race belt. So you take the race belt out, you click it on, put your shoes on. The only other thing I had was a hat, because I'd already be wearing my sunglasses. You put the hat on and off you go. So again, super easy. You don't need a lot of stuff. You will see people with a ton of stuff, and I just promise you that this is about all you need. Again, you might have some contacts, you might have a hair tie, whatever it is, sunscreen. But as far as the main things, this is really it. So that's how you set up for transition. Again, good thing to practice and to get comfortable with whatever it is, that is most comfortable for you. So let me come back to the clearly professional transition area. Couple of things I jumped over that I want to come back to is one, when you get out of the swim, you're going to have that long way to not long way, a little bit of a jog until you actually get to the transition area. Now, I usually use that time to one, get my bearings. You're going to have kind of sea legs, so get comfortable. It's also a good time if you're wearing a wetsuit to unzip it and then to take it off at least halfway. That's going to make it a lot easier when you get to transition to just slide it off and go. And that run portion, you're probably not going to be, it's not going to be your fastest sprint ever. So using that time to get the wetsuit off. And whenever you're done with stuff, you just leave it in the same area, as close as your stuff as possible. So coming into transition, you can have a bag, but you don't want, it needs to be reasonably sized. And actually, I think we have some people from Lifetime, because as I'm saying that, I'm realizing that maybe I believe you can keep them in transition. So if you do have a bag, it goes underneath your rear wheel. And again, a clarification, because they may actually give you a transition bag, like a clear bag for transition. But yeah, so any bags you have, would go underneath your rear wheel. Again, just trying to, be mindful of other people's space and getting it as close to your stuff as possible. Let's see. Okay, so we've got the checklist, which was the get a plan. We have the rehearse, so practicing. So setting something up like this, even if it seems silly, before you go out for your ride, setting it up and putting your bike stuff out and then going out for a ride. And then we have initiate the plan. So you've had the checklist, you have the plan. Now it's about the race day, and and just what to do. Don't try to deviate. Number one, get to transition early. So there's going to be a time frame that transition opens, and just hypothetically say it closes at 6:30 a.m. Do not get to transition at 6:20, 6:25 a.m. You want to have enough time to not be rushed, to find your spot, to get comfortable. Who knows what fill your bike tire up. I highly recommend doing that at home night before, but things happen, and maybe it lost a little air overnight, whatever it is. But get there early so that you don't have to rush. And I promise you the time will fly by and you're going to be way more comfortable versus trying to run in at 6:25, not having time to set up any of your stuff. Looking for landmarks, exactly what I said. Yeah, this is a picture of transition. Looks like a mess to me, and but finding, figuring out, is it by a tree? Is it by, what, a tent, whatever it is. So at least you can get in the general area of where your stuff is. And then again, stick to the plan. Don't add things the morning of. You'll know what to do by then, just kind of sticking to what it is. Let's see. And then time to shine. I mean, I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but nothing new. It's pretty simple. Take your time. Again, I would much rather spend an extra 30 seconds in transition getting my sock on right versus, not, and riding with one sock and being really uncomfortable the whole time. Same thing with, sunscreen or whatever it is, just thinking about, have some sense of, urgency or not. I mean, I always tell this story of, we had one athlete who was an amazing gentleman. And you know what? He did it his own way, and he would have a sandwich in transition. And I mean, he does. I'm pretty sure hold one of the records for the slowest transitions. But you know what? He really enjoyed himself, and he did the way he wanted to do it. So don't worry about taking your time. And this is also area, that as you get more and more comfortable with triathlons, you'll get more and more comfortable with this, and you can speed up your transition and go with the flow. I think this is the number one thing about triathlons in general is going with the flow, and that's pretty much nothing. There will never really be a day that everything goes exactly as planned. So again, I mean, whether that's a friend of mine who forgot his bike shoes. Well, you know what? I mean, he ended up actually, I think he forgot all of his shoes and ended up doing it barefoot. That's kind of an extreme, but nothing ever goes quite as planned. And that's what I love about triathlons, because it teaches you to just be flexible, teaches you to, problem solve in the moment and to just go with the flow. And ultimately, I think the most important thing is to have fun. So time to shine. I don't know. I think that's about it. So I'll go back to one of the pictures that might be helpful as people ask questions. Yeah, so that is transitions in a nutshell. So let's see what we have as far as questions. Okay. All right. Lots of questions. I love it. Okay. I will, yes. So one of the questions is, are there recordings available? Yes. And if you haven't seen them on, if you haven't seen them on the Facebook page, again, if you email me, I can email them to you if you don't have Facebook. And Gillian, so Gillian at livegrit.com. You can email me and I'll send you the YouTubes, but they will be all on Facebook. They are already in the Chicago Triathlon First Timers Program 2021. I hope we got the sound figured out, or that won't be good. So question is it okay if socks cover the chip, or should it be on the outside? Yeah, I think yes. It's okay if the sock covers the chip. That's not, it's strong enough to get through that. I mean, that, I only hesitate because I'm just thinking about if there's any like uncomfortableness about it rubbing or anything like that. But yes, it's okay for if you're wearing higher socks, then that's fine. Let's see. Is there a decision yet about hydration? Let me see. I'm just seeing if. So I don't think I actually see any of the people from the Chicago Triathlon. So I don't know yet. I will ask that question and definitely post it or make sure to address it in the next webinar. But yeah, I don't know that yet. I think right now it is posted on their website that Gatorade is going to be the encore stuff. So my guess is yes, there'll be some form of hydration, whether that's the same, of the individual cups or whether they're doing like bottles or something. I'm not sure, but I will try to get an answer to that. Another question is, are hydration vests allowed? Yep, they are allowed. You can wear hydration vests or hydration belts. That's totally fine. So again, if you want your own if you want to be certain that you're going to have hydration, you can bring your own for sure. Great question. Do you need the race belt for the bike? No, that's the whole purpose of the race belt, is that you don't need it for the bike. So you only put it on for the run. And instead of sitting there trying to pin your race belt, you can just snap it and go. Awesome. Okay. How does it work with okay, great. Yeah. So, and I wish I hadn't lost mine this weekend. But so the race belt is just a belt that has two little toggles, and then you're on the toggle, you're going to put your number. So you don't need it for the swim and you don't need it for the bike. You literally only put it on for the run. So yes, you definitely don't swim in it. You just have it for the run. Let's see. Great question. There's a question about when I say take off on the bike, what exactly do I mean by that? And that is a great question for clarification. So you're going to have your bike. When you're ready to go, you're going to unhook your bike. You're going to unhook your bike, and then you're going to either run or walk the bike. So you're not going to jump on your bike right away and go. You're going to run or walk your bike, which is also a good thing to practice, is practice running or walking your bike. You're going to head towards this big arch that's going to be on the north side of transition. You'll certainly see it the morning of, that says bike out. At the bike out arch, there's going to be what's called a mount line. Okay, so it's going to be a big line on the ground. There's going to be lots of volunteers telling you, don't get on your bike until you cross the mount line. So you're going to cross over the mount line, and then you can jump on your bike and go. So that's a great question that I can't believe I totally skipped over. Do not get on your bike until you get to the mount line. You're also going to want to make sure your bike is in a gear that's comfortable right away. So you don't want to be in a super heavy gear. You probably don't want to be in a super light gear. You do start off going on a bit of an incline, so go towards the easier side, so that when you jump on, you're not all of a sudden in your hardest gear and can't get up the hill. So that's a great question. Coming back, same thing. There's going to be a dismount line, and you have to, again, there'll be lots of volunteers. You have to dismount off your bike before you cross that line. And then you're going to, again, run, walk your bike back to your transition area. So, yeah, hopefully that makes sense. But that was a great question. Let's see. Yes, so can you put your stuff in a bag? Yes, you can put your stuff in the bag. And the thing I want to get clarification on is, in the past, for safety reasons and such, some races had started giving you a plastic bag to bring your stuff in versus that was clear. So I will also get clarification for that. The last two clinics are really about answering all of these questions. So I will make note of that to make sure I get the answer. Let's see. Yeah. And one question, can I just pin the number on? You absolutely can. There is no rule against that. It's totally fine. I will just say that, there's I think a lot of people after they've tried that a time or so are just like, you know what, it's not worth it. But absolutely you can. And you can just pin your number on instead of having a race belt. Let's see. Yep. There's a question about having sand socks to swim in and then run to the transition area. Yep. That's fine too. So one of the things, depending on the weather, and also just that is, yes, you can't have anything that has like webbed, you can't have webbed toes or webbed feet, but they do make swim socks, both for warmth and other things that you can swim in. And that's fine too, if that's your preference. The question is, at the last swim clinic, my instructor mentioned taking the wetsuit totally off right after getting out of the water and carrying it on your run. Um, Again, that's definitely a preference. I will say the way that transition is set, not transition, the swim out is set up. You got 5,000 people coming out of the water, not all at the same time. And so the area is not super conducive to standing around and getting your wetsuit off. There are other races that might be more conducive to that. So totally fine. And I trust, at the swim clinic coaches are incredibly competent and experienced triathletes. So yeah, definitely a way to do it. I've just always done it of taking it half off, because right when I get out of the water, the last thing I want to do is kind of fumble around right there to get my wetsuit off. But again, just a personal opinion. But absolutely. Let's see. Can you set up transition the day before? No, you can't set up. The only thing you can do the day before is rack your bike. You can't leave anything else. You can't leave your helmet. You can't leave your bag. You can only rack your bike. So the transition is going to be the morning of. And the other reason that you actually need to go to transition is they're going to do what one, they'll check your numbers and everything, but and I was about to say they do body markings. So usually and I don't know why this is a thing in triathlons, but they write your age on the back of your calf. So they do that down at transition as well the morning of. But if you can only actually set up your transition area the morning of. And like I kind of said, when you are done with your stuff, you just try to get it back in the same area, so I would put my wetsuit where my bike shoes were after I'm done with that. I'd then put my bike stuff, next to on top of the wetsuit once I'm done with that. You just try to kind of get it in the same area. Let's see. Question about headphones. Yep, no headphones in the Chicago Triathlon for any part of it. Renting wetsuits. So the place that I know is Urban Tri Gear out in the suburbs. So that would be the first. I know they've been renting down at the clinics. That would be the first place that I would call. So it's called Urban Tri Gear. The other place that may still rent wetsuits is a bike shop called Mox, so MOX, in the West Loop. So they also might rent wetsuits for the triathlon. Yep, you can wear hydration vests. Spectators, that's a great question. As far as I know, there are no restrictions on spectators at this point. So I think that it is open as usual. The swim is a great place to spectate. I'll make sure to give some more information as we get close at the last two clinics about some other places. The swim and the run are the best place to spectate. Bike is really, if you have a very committed spectator, there are a couple of bridges that they can go to on like the bus causeway thing. But the swim and the run are really easy to spectate. Is it chaotic where the mounting and dismounting line is? Luckily, no. Even though it's a very large triathlon, it really does space out quite a bit. So you remarkably have a lot of areas. The areas that I would say are the most dangerous as far as biking is there are a couple 180-degree hairpin turns. So when you turn around at Hollywood and then down, if you're doing the international distance, there's another one where you turn around, and really thinking about slowing down on those turns, not taking it at full speed is, again, cutting it may make you slow down a little bit, but you'll definitely have a much better race if you don't crash. So those are the areas that are actually the most difficult. Mountain dismount line, luckily it's pretty wide. People, again, making sure there's going to be enough volunteers there that there's no way you can just drive right through. So slowing down again, not waiting right to the line to jump off. Yeah, so it's actually, don't worry about it. It's pretty spacious. Um, let's see. Great questions though. Yeah, so do volunteers check your chips at the transition area? So at the expo, there'll be a place you go where they check to make sure your chip works. They do not check your chip um, at the transition area. I mean, I can't recall that anybody is like they're looking for it. Make sure you have it when you leave, mainly so that you, one, get your time counted, but two, to make sure make sure that they know who's actually in the water. So most likely, actually, they check your chip as you're going into the water. So it's a really good thing. If you forgot your chip, there are people around and that will try really, really hard to solve the problem and get you one so you can get in the water. But really making sure you remember that chip the morning of. So if you do not have a chip, you can't get in the water, because that's how they track that everybody who got in got out from a safety perspective. So even if if you didn't, for whatever reason, didn't want your time or whatever it is, you still have to have the chip on. If you don't have your chip on, you won't get timed at all. So for whatever, I mean, I do know people who, again, nothing goes as planned, have lost it at some point during the race or whatever it is, and then it will just stop timing you. You may get a phone call later from Chicago Triathlon making sure you're okay. But if you don't have your timing chip on, you don't get a time. So that's there's going to be timing mats all along the way. So it looks like those were all the questions, unless I've missed any. Awesome. Well, so I hope that was a good, overview, at least to give you a little understanding of how the transition works. Again, highly recommend just practicing. Highly recommend making a checklist. That's transitions. And 3 weeks from now, that clinic, we're mainly going to be talking about a lot of these questions that people have asked, some that will be asked along the way, just kind of how to prepare for race day. And then the last clinic will be kind of the nitty gritty about race day, and again, answering any last minute questions. So at this point, you're good to go. You've got all of the information. So now it's all about just practicing and having fun, getting comfortable with it. So again, as always, feel free to reach out with any questions, but if not, I will post this in the next couple of days, and we will see everybody very, very soon. So awesome. Have a good one.